Hello, my name is Jenna Goddard, and I'm the Writing Center Coordinator at Thompson Rivers University, where I also teach student success courses. Today, I'm going to introduce you to... What am I doing? What's happening? Where am I? MLA. Today, I'm going to introduce you to the MLA citation style and chat about some of the differences between the 9th edition and the 8th edition. First, I'd like to acknowledge that Thompson Rivers University is situated on the traditional lands of the Tk'emlúps to Secwepemc within Secwepemcúlecw, the traditional and unceded territory of the Secwepemc people. The artwork you see here was created by Johnny Bandura in response to the 215 bodies that were found on the site of a former residential school in Kamloops, BC. In this video, I'm going to introduce MLA and where to use it. I'll chat about some of the common misconceptions of MLA, explain some of the differences between the 8th edition and 9th edition, and then I'll break it down into 3 categories, looking at the format and structure, in-text citations, and then the Works Cited page. Finally, I'll introduce some tricky MLA questions and leave you with some resources. MLA stands for Modern Languages Association, and it's the style of documentation that you'll commonly find in your first-year English class, in language arts, cultural studies, and other humanities disciplines. It outlines the guidelines for formatting your paper, for including in-text citations, and for creating your Works Cited page. What's different about MLA is that it follows a template of core elements, and it allows writers the flexibility to cite any kind of work. Instead of being really strict about rules like its cousin APA, MLA encourages flexibility and deviation where it's appropriate, though the writer really has to think about what makes sense for their context. The focus of MLA is readability. It allows the author to present their ideas in the most accessible way. And of course, it helps you avoid plagiarism in your writing. Before digging into the citation style, I'm first going to address some common misconceptions or questions that I hear from students in the Writing Center. First, MLA is always changing. Actually, your instructor's expectations for a citation style might change. However, citation guides and styles don't change frequently. The last iteration of MLA came out in 2016. And usually, a big deal is made when a new edition of a citation style comes out. Or maybe it's just in my nerd communities that it's a big deal. Another question I often hear is, why does one of my instructors want a title page and another one tells me it's not necessary? While the 9th edition of MLA doesn't require a title page, some instructors simply might prefer one. Your paper should always reflect your instructor's preferences. Another comment I often hear is, if I put all my sources in my list of works cited, I'm covered. This is often from students who are a little bit worried about plagiarism, so think that if they put every single resource that they've encountered in their works cited page, then that means they won't get busted for plagiarism. Actually, every resource that is listed in your works cited must also be referenced or have influenced your paper. Another question I sometimes hear is, does anyone actually care? And I know it might seem frustrating if you feel like you're putting more effort and more time into creating a works cited page or in formatting your document than into the actual content. However, that's not the point. It's about giving credit when you're using other resources. And to be frank, some instructors care more than others. In April 2021, the Modern Languages Association released its updated style manual, and the good news is that the changes make it a lot easier to use for students. There's lots of examples and visuals available. I'm only going to cover some of the most important ones for students in this video, but please check out the full guide for all of the changes. I'll talk about some of the changes to language, grammar and mechanics, the important changes to in-text citations, and the works cited list. The TRU Writing Center has also updated its handy MLA in a nutshell guide, so please feel free to check that out on our website or in the Writing Center in Old Main 1411. The 9th edition of MLA encourages writers to really think about the language that they're using and emphasize the focus on relevance, precision, being respectful, being thoughtful, and being really aware of any exclusionary pronouns, judgment, or offensive terms. It's really important to think critically about the choices that you're making when you use certain language, what's appropriate for specific contexts, and who might be reading this. One of the points I'd like to highlight is using people first and or identity first language, depending on the individual's or group's preference. This guide really emphasizes the fact that there's no single correct way that will be appropriate in every single context. So consider first asking for the individual's or group's preference. The second change I'd like to talk about is to grammar and mechanics. There have been several changes to spelling, punctuation, capitalization, pluralization, and use of italics. Again, what characterizes MLA is its flexibility. So there may be more than one way to spell a word. Just make sure you're being consistent within your paper. There are also some changes made to formatting a research paper. Formatting lists, for example, identifying collaborative projects, of which there are quite a few in university, presenting tables and figures, and documenting their sources. The third change I'd like to talk about are to in-text citations. Again, the focus of MLA is readability, so the point of an in-text citation is to be unobtrusive as possible while still directing the readers to the source being cited. Whenever you use an in-text citation, it will connect to the full reference on the Works Cited list. Whenever you use an in-text citation, think of it as a little flag that you're waving for your reader, like, hey, I got this information from somewhere else. It will begin with the shortest piece of information and direct your reader to your Works Cited page for the full resource. And this might change. It could be the author's last name, or the title, or the description of the work. How you write your in-text citation might change. It can appear within the sentence or in parentheses. I've included some examples here of how you can include the author within the sentence or within the parentheses. It might also be helpful for your reader if you include an indicator of the place in the work where the information is found. Sometimes this is a page number, it might be a line number, or a timestamp. Although the author's name, or the title, or the description can appear within the sentence, the indicator always needs to be in parentheses, as you can see in the examples here. The last change I'd like to focus on here is in reference to the Works Cited page. Entries in the Works Cited list are created using the MLA template of core elements. The core elements refer to facts that are common to most sources. Consult the work or resource that you are using and find all relevant information to include in your Works Cited list. If any of the core elements do not apply or you can't find them, simply omit them. I'm now going to break down the basics of MLA into 3 categories. I'll focus on the format and structure, I'll chat more about in-text citations, and then I'll talk about the Works Cited list. In terms of the format and structure, please double space the entire paper and use a 12-point legible, which means readable, font like Times New Roman. You should be leaving 1 space after periods and after any punctuation marks. It's important to include page numbers as a header in the top right corner along with your last name. Okay, does anyone actually memorize all of the format and structure expectations for a citation style? Maybe, but you don't have to. What I encourage students to do to save time is to create a template according to the specifications of that citation style on their desktop. So you might have an APA template, an MLA template, maybe a Chicago template. And every time you go to start a new paper, you just open up that template and resave it as your new paper. This way, you only have to format the paper one time, as opposed to every time. The first page of an MLA paper looks really different from the first page of an APA paper. For MLA, you do not need a title page. Instead, in the upper left-hand corner of your first page, please list your name, your instructor's name, course, and the date. The title should be centered and title case. And don't forget your header in the upper right-hand corner, which includes your last name and the page number. Section headings in MLA are to improve a document's readability. MLA is again flexible with how these can look. It's just important to keep them consistent throughout your paper. You'll see 2 examples listed here. 1 using numbered headings, and 2 with headings that are unnumbered. Since students sometimes struggle with in-text citations, I thought I'd take a moment to go through some examples of how they can look. Please take a look at the 3 examples listed at the top of the page. You'll notice that the author's name is not always with the indicator or the page number in this case. Once again, the author's name can appear within the sentence or within the parentheses. You'll notice, however, that the page number always is in the parentheses. Paraphrases may not need an indicator, which is typically a page number or a paragraph number or a timestamp. However, direct quotes should have an indicator. You'll also notice that the full stop or the period is outside of the parentheses. Here's a little bit more information to guide your in-text citations. MLA uses parenthetical citations like APA. It will often include a signal word or phrase. Typically it's the author's last name, but sometimes it could be a part of the title or a description of the work. And an indicator, which is most often the page number, but it could also be a line number, a paragraph, a chapter, maybe a scene. If you are including a direct quote that is fewer than 4 lines long, integrate it into your sentence and use quotation marks to set it aside. If it's more than 4 lines long, it should be formatted as a separate block quote. Here's an example of what your Works Cited page might look like. I'd like you to take a moment to notice the formatting and the spacing. Works Cited pages are formatted with something called a hanging indent. You'll notice that the author's last name comes first, followed by their first name. You may notice that the title of the work looks a little bit different from how you format an APA references page. If you have a keen editor's eye, you may notice that the author's name in the header, followed by the page number, is missing in this example. I was just checking to see if you were paying attention. There's nothing wrong with my example. Nothing at all. Your Works Cited page always appears at the end of your paper on a separate page. Make sure you've also included your header on the last page. Works Cited should be centered at the top, and the entries should be alphabetized. The entire document should be double-spaced and formatted with a hanging indent. I'm a big fan of time-saving tips for students. When you are using the TRU Library website to find your resources, along the right-hand side of the page are several tools. One of them says Cite. If you click on that, it will give you a list of citations. Find the MLA 9th edition citation. A word of caution, the library cite function is not 100% accurate. So simply use it as a starting point and double check to make sure all the information is accurate. I'd like to address some of the tricky MLA questions that tutors sometimes hear in the Writing Center. Students often ask how they cite indirect sources. An indirect source is something that is cited in another article. I know it's a little time-consuming, but if possible, you should always find the original source and cite it directly. If it's not possible to find the primary source, then your in-text citation should look like the example there. In your parentheses, make sure to include the word quoted in, or QTD period, and then the source from which you extracted the information. Sometimes you won't be able to find an author for a resource. In your in-text citation, simply use a shortened title of the resource. MLA uses 2 types of footnotes, bibliographical and content. This is where you would put any additional sources or information that would interrupt the text or impact the readability of your paper. Only include them if they're really important. MLA recommends that you use them sparingly. If you're using endnotes, and again, only if necessary, they would appear before the Works Cited list. A few resources that might be helpful for you are, of course, the 9th edition MLA handbook. You can also book an appointment with the TRU Writing Center. Make sure that you book with a tutor who lists one of their specialties as MLA. Feel free to check out the resources we have. Again, we've updated our nutshell guide, so feel free to check that out on our website or in the center. Once again, the TRU library has that cite function that can save you some time. They also have a lot of great citation resources on their website. Finally, if you haven't already, check out the online writing lab or the Purdue OWL. They have a ton of resources for MLA, as well as other citation styles. I hope you found this video helpful. It certainly will be important to the rest of your life. Nobody cares. My life sucks. I hope you found this resource helpful. Please feel free to check out my other videos on academic writing and studying.